Hi, welcome to the Hot Seat Redmos podcast. I'm with a good friend, Mervyn. Is it Dinnen or Dinnen?
Dinnen.
Dinnen. I like Dinnen. It's very.
Call me Dinnen. I answer to most things.
I'm going to say Dinnen because it sounds just like a poet or something. Anyway, I'm with Mervyn. I'll let Mervyn introduce himself. Mervyn, tell us briefly about yourself, how you're connected to recruitment, and why you're here.
I'm here because I want to learn, and it's part of the ongoing conversation of being in social media and finding out what's happening and talking to a lot of recruitment and HR professionals about candidate experience, client experience, new technologies and stuff. Yep. I've been in recruitment 20 years. I started off as an accountant. I trained to be an accountant. I hated it. I kept going to accountancy recruitment agencies saying, find me an interesting job, and they all said, you should do this. Yeah. And so I did. And over the years I've recruited accountants, I've recruited salespeople, and recruiters, which got me into HR recruitment, which is what I've done for the last 5 years. Yeah,
that's interesting, because I wanted to talk to you about the rec-to-rec side of things, because you've got an insight into that as well, yes. Haven't you? Yeah. So, I mean, give me sort of 20 years, and you've worked in recruitment, in-house as well?
Not really in-house, no.
Okay,
no.
So always as a third party. Okay, so what's your best recruitment experience thus far?
Best recruitment experience? God.
Any stories would be much appreciated.
Oh, stories. Well, I mean, I last year, although it was obviously a very bad year for the recruitment industry, I managed to make my biggest fee ever, and that was randomly. It was no sales involved. Effectively, it was a company. It was actually an HR director based in the Middle East who had used us 20 years ago. To do some recruitment for him. Very impressed. And he needed somebody. First time he needed to recruit in 20 years. So he thought he'd go back to the company and see if the company was still around. Oh, wow. That he used 20 years before. He got me. Yeah. There was a loose connection on LinkedIn between him and me through somebody else, which kind of was good enough for him. Yeah. Gave me an exclusive. It was head of HR for a financial services business in the Middle East. Yeah. And I filled it.
Wow, so was it a contingency placement or retained search?
It was contingent search, effectively. It was exclusive with us. They didn't play a third. It's a lot of companies don't out there. No. So there was no retainer as such, but it was exclusive.
But you managed to get it, which is quite rare that, from contingency point of view, that, you managed to get it exclusively and you filled it. What about the flip side of that question? Worst experience, any shockers in those 20 years experience, either yourself or you've heard of someone else? Recruitment shockers.
Lots of recruitment shockers.
Any particularly stand out?
People never fail to let you down. I suppose most of them revolve around the same thing, which is people not being straight with you, people lying to you or taking jobs when they maybe have other jobs, and people arranging interviews with you and then just not turning up because they've got another job, and people arranging for their wives to give them references, passing them off as their ex-boss, and over the year, I can think of so many of them, unfortunately. Most of them in recruitment to recruitment, interestingly enough. Yeah.
Oh, really? So actual recruiters are playing the system there?
Oh, yes, yeah. The difficult thing with recruitment to recruitment is that everybody you interact with, candidates and clients, do what you do. Yes. And therefore, I often say it's a bit like trying to, cook for a chef. Kind of, it's they judge what you've done for them, refracted through what they do. So it's not always easy.
No, I mean, if we just focus in on the sort of whole rec-to-rec side of things, I mean, there is that argument, isn't there? If a recruiter recruits and finds people jobs, why can't they do that for themselves? Why would they want to go to a rec-to-rec company? Be it, and I've used a rec-to-rec company and I actually found they did add value because they knew a market better than I did. But what about that argument? If you're a recruiter, surely you're trained to find leads, find out who a business contact is, and the rest of it.
I would agree, Dee. I think that in the main, if you're looking at recruitment consultants with a couple of years' experience, going to maybe a big, more established, I won't name names, but obviously, a established, publicly quoted niche business, they don't need a recruitment to recruitment person to do that. They ought to do it themselves. Yeah. normally they would go through a recruitment company in that scenario if they felt maybe they weren't quite what that company were looking for. But in the main, a lot of recruitment companies aren't that good at getting experienced people for themselves.
Okay, and then that goes with the recruitment consultancy being your client. Then that same argument, surely you can find candidates yourself. If you can't find consultants for your own company, how are you finding candidates? How are they finding candidates for their clients? So is there some sort of, I don't know, if a recruitment consultant comes through a rec company, is their reputation tainted in any way, or do they lose a few points because they've come through that route?
I don't think so. I think where recruitment really adds value is being able to spread the name, so that maybe smaller companies who wouldn't be on the radar of recruiters, we are able to go out and tell the market about them.
Yeah.
I think that crossing sectors, you'll find a lot of people maybe into finance or into marketing recruitment might come from other sectors, and that's something would be difficult to do. Quite often people are relocating, and so they don't know the market where they're going. In the main, we add value by being able to maybe contextualise what's available in the market. Yeah. So we can show them larger companies, smaller companies, niche players, and kind of put into context things that they could do that they might not realise outside of their own company and the immediate competitors of that company.
Yeah. But right now you're not in the rec-to-rec company at all, are you? You're recruiting in what sector? HR, isn't it? Yeah.
HR,
so
yes.
okay. So how, now you're sort of not doing the rec-to-rec side of things, how did you find sort of coming back into mainstream recruitment, if you like, and comparisons between the two?
They're very different. Recruitment is very much a candidate-driven sector, and by that, I know obviously we're all looking for candidates, but I mean it's very candidate-led. Yes. You've got a niche number. It's a niche. You've got a set number of clients, really. I mean, if you wanted to place recruitment consultants in finance recruitment companies, you can list the 10 obvious ones in London, and those are your clients. Yeah. So it's all about finding the good candidates. Right. Whereas HR is more of a client-led sector, in which case you need to form those relationships and go out and find the candidates. Yeah. It's different. HR people, HR is seen as a profession. Recruitment, unfortunately, isn't always seen as a profession. As such, your candidates and clients are interchangeable. I work across all sectors, from kind of senior HR advisors right through to kind of group directors and stuff. So my candidates become clients, my clients become candidates. Yeah. And that's what appeals to me, because it's all about the relationship, and it's all about managing the expectation and delivering on that expectation.
Yeah. So when you've placed, like a HR director with a client, obviously they then become decision makers for that company, or they hold, they have access to all the jobs that company's recruiting for, meaning that you've put the pivotal person in, but you're not actually going to work on necessarily any of the jobs that company's looking for, although you've put the person in who has access to all of those positions. Do you know what I mean? So is that a missed opportunity from your company point of view, that you're putting decision makers in, but you're not really going to be working on any of the jobs that they end up needing to fill?
Well, we do. I mean, they would come back to us for HR roles. Okay. And we're part of a wider group that does marketing recruitment, so we might pick up those as well. Yeah, but no, I mean, I don't. It's part of. I mean, I'm focused really on the sector I'm in, and depending on the size of the company, there will always be a number of HR roles. Yeah,
so it's, you'll be a useful contact then for recruitment consultants, because you're going to know the heads of the HR team, so to speak, who they'll be pitching to eventually. Next question is, what's the best recruitment advice that you've ever been given?
Best recruitment advice? There's so many. The very first, in fact, I write a blog and I did this the other day. The very first thing I was ever told on my first day is people buy people first and everything else after. And it was very much a candidate-driven marketplace there again. And it was drilled into me almost that the candidates are future clients. They're very important people. A lot of recruiters don't spend much time on candidate relationships. Half of the tracks here today are talking about candidate experience. How can we engage the candidates more? And most of the time, it's because recruitment consultants don't see value in talking to candidates who aren't right for the jobs they've got. Whereas you never know when that person's going to come, an opportunity's going to come, but you don't know who that person knows.
And why do you think it's gone that way? Why has the dialogue dried up with candidates? Why do consultants go? Are they too busy to get in touch with everyone who they can't use? Is it a flaw of the consultant? Is it a flaw of? Is it just the fact that the sheer volume makes that a very difficult task? Or is it just that we're selfish?
I think there's 2 or 3 answers there. I think we are becoming a bit more selfish about it. I think that the development of the traditional sales recruitment model that most agencies now use means that the focus is on activity, is on KPIs, numbers of calls. Numbers of interviews nowadays isn't so important. It's numbers of calls, numbers of vacancies, the speed. Most clients choose a recruitment partner based on cost and speed of hire. And so a lot of the time it'll be, this is all we're going to pay, and we want CVs within 24 hours. So the consultants, because they're targeted on fees, and they only get remunerated basically on the fees they do, have to fill as many jobs as they can as quickly as they can. And that doesn't really, that kind of relationship development, which is a skill in itself, because most of the time it's about ringing people when you don't have anything specific to talk to them about, but you're just building that relationship, finding out about them, getting information you can use in the future. A lot of that just isn't factored into a recruitment consultant's day.
Yeah. So almost the system's flawed in the sense that we reward bad behaviour in a sense, because it's a commission-based industry. It's a bit like the finance industry and the whole sort of credit crunch, in that recruitment consultants are focused on billings, which means that becomes the priority, and you almost walk over whoever you can, because you've got pound signs in your eyes almost. So are we remunerated in the correct way? Does that need to adapt? Do we also now need to maybe have a portion of commissions based on feedback from candidates and clients, perhaps? Maybe a portion for doing the work, but a portion held back based on feedback surveys that come in. I mean, would that work in the industry the way things are evolving?
Well, it's a good question. It does work, because that's what we do where I work. A lot of the bonus that we get on an annual basis is purely based on feedback from clients, candidates, and colleagues.
Yeah.
More and more companies are beginning to put in an element of this, but I think the difficulty is that we recognise the closing of the deal. We don't really recognise everything that goes on to lead up to the closing of that deal, unless it involves really pushing back on a candidate or a client. In the main, the relationship builders, the account managers, the people who can put everything together, it's almost seen as softer skills. They're almost seen as not very good salespeople. Whereas most companies are out there looking for the guys who can really close the deals. And I think that there needs to be recognition. There needs to be recognition of everything that goes into the process that leads to the closing of the deal.
Okay, that's interesting.